Hello, good evening. How are you?
Hello, good evening, sir.
You
Good, how are
good?
you?
I'm great, great, great. Could you hear me loud and clear?
Yeah.
So let's get started. So basically, we are live on Facebook as well. Just a kind of YouTube kind of trying to have these two big technologies synced up with all those securities and everything in place. That's a kind of learning for me also. So this is our first live YouTube seminar, and let's see how we can progress with that. Yes, have we all got Kali Linux virtual machine in place? Means have you installed? Have you started practicing on Kali Linux? Anybody left behind?
Yes, started.
Uh, you got your, Kali Linux in place, right? How about you, Anantaji,
Uh,
Midunji?
yes, sir.
You
I'm
have.
I'm I'm trying to learn.
Means where have you slept, sir?
I have installed it, but I have not got the chance to like play around with it.
Uh-huh. Is it started for you, or there are some challenges?
It's good. Yeah.
Means it started for you, right?
Yes, sir.
Okay, great. How about Midunji?
Yes, sir. Fine, sir. I installed in my laptop, sir. But right now I'm in traveling.
Oh, okay, okay, no problem. I can listen to that. Plus, be sure it's installed and working, and you can try all those 300 plus tool sets there, right? We have discussed good amount of them within our session, so it'll be a good learning curve. So I'll not harp on that. Let's move on. Yes, now what we are going to do, we have learned around 30 odd IDIM scanner and vulnerability scanner and network scanners. Let's try to categorize this scanner, because in some of the interviews we found that we have to categorize scanner in terms of the implementation, in terms of instrument they are basically being analyzed, being scanned through and all those things, right? So let's try to understand, if somebody asks you how do you categorize these scanner, right? So the answer could be from the today's session, and we'll try to understand what type of different types of scanning or different type of instruments scanning does lead you to actually answer that question, like what are different type of scanners available as far as cybersecurity goes, right? So let's work on that. So it's a kind of we are preparing towards the better and better interview answers, so that the obstacle call interview can be cleared in the least possible time with the best possible result, right? So yes, we do need to practice in terms of how to answer. Do practice in front of mirror, write down some script, and that'll give you a good a kind of known answer to start with whenever somebody asks you questions like tell me about yourself, tell me about your current project and all. So at least we should have these 3 4 questions answered, written somewhere as a script, and then whenever somebody asks questions in the vicinity of those answers, we can clearly start giving those answers without much debating on what to give as an answer, or keep thinking about the answer. Okay, so that's the point here. Try to reply with the full confidence and trust to the interviewer, so that the interviewer trust is basically being captured, and you are kind of best candidate for answering those interviews or attending those interviews. Okay, so let's try to understand. A vulnerability scanner is an automated tool that defines and creates inventory of all IT assets. We had a look at these things last time. What are the IT assets and all those things? So the assets we are talking about, like server, desktop, laptop, virtual machine, containers, firewalls, switches, printers, smartphone. Now switches are also routers are also included, and so on and so forth. So this list keep getting better day by day, because there are good number of smart devices we use into this. There are devices like Internet of Things, IoT devices. There are devices like smart controller or smart switches, as you normally call in day-to-day life. That also we need to make sure that they have been scanned as far as any vulnerability, any remote controlling mechanism, or any weak links present in their software solutions, or the working by any chance. Okay, so all these devices which are connected to that network, we scan for vulnerabilities. For each asset, it also attempts to identify operational details such as operating system OS it runs on, the software installed, and along with the other attributes. Such open ports other attributes which do include open ports, user accounts, and this vulnerability scanner enables organizations to monitor their network systems and application for security vulnerabilities continuously. And we do these things as a periodic review. So what we do, we normally runs at least once a day. These are all automated scanner. They give you a log, they give you a report where the escalation asks are clearly marked. Many of them have a really colorful output as in report. Okay, so we just analyze that report and we try to understand what type of vulnerabilities this software are talking about. Then we might basically take a deep dive, take a deep, good analysis of those weak links, and if such weak link does exist, and we don't want, so we'll address that weak link on priority. This is how normally the SOC team works. Most security teams, the SOC team we are talking about, utilize vulnerability scanner to bring to light uh, the security vulnerabilities in their systems, networks, applications, and procedures. So this way, we continuously keep scanning our network, and progressively keep filling the weak links, the gaps within our network, within our system, so that our system will be more and more steady, stable, and have all the preventions needed to address such weak links within our system. There are plethora of vulnerability scanning tools available, each offering a unique combination of capabilities, and there are basically number of scanner which are basically targeted to a specific reason, specific entity as well. Like for a network, for packet receiving and sending, for the port analysis, for the packet forwarding, and so on and so forth. Okay, so there are different type of unique scanner as well, and there are some sort of a combination of scanners as well. Leading vulnerability scanner provide users with the information about weakness in their environment, insight into degrees of risk for each vulnerabilities, and recommendation on how to mitigate the vulnerability and the combination thereof. So here we use this vulnerability scanner to address the weakness in environment, what we normally refer as a weak link, then insight into degree of risk for each vulnerabilities. So how the vulnerability is critical to your network. If you're looking for a data storage type of vulnerabilities, then a backdoor entry like a guest account can be one of the risks, right? There are, if you are looking for packet sending and receiving, then a singular opening port which can be a backdoor entry to your network, and so on and so forth. So this way, even most of these scanners, they lead you to tools or techniques to be used to mitigate that vulnerability. Does that make any sense? Anybody having any question as of now as far as vulnerability scanners?
I'm good.
Are we good?
Yes, sir.
Okay, today. So here what we are trying to do, we are trying to basically understand the vulnerability scanners and their type. Okay, in terms of a normal thought process, the vulnerability scanners are divided into these five different categories. First, network-based scans, host-based scans, wireless scan, application scan, and database scan. As you can see, these are clearly demarked for a given entity. Network-based scan basically for networks, host-based are basically for the workstations or the servers, wireless scan basically for the wireless network or the different wireless network available. One is IP4, IP5, NLP, the near live scan, Bluetooth, live Bluetooth, and the whole 9 yards of wireless networks. Then we have an application scan. These are specifically used by all software and infrastructure vendor, where they detect the software vulnerability, the infrastructure vulnerability, the misconfiguration of the networks, and so on and so forth. And database scans, as we have seen, identifies the weak point in your database. Might be a port open or the guest logins, and so on and so forth. So whenever somebody asks you a question, Could you please share the types of vulnerability? So in terms of the entity these vulnerability scanner normally address, there are 5 types. First one is network-based scan, where we identify the possible network security attacks and vulnerability system on a given network. So here we are analyzing continuously, periodically a given network, given IP addresses, so that we could find any vulnerability, any security breach, or any person who is hitting our network without the given permissions, or he or she is trying to penetrate your network, gain access to a resource on your network, and that way we can basically make sure all such requests are turned down unless and until it's a trusted user account. What do you mean by trusted user account? An account which is, let's say, of your one of the partner employees or somebody like that who has authorization and authentication to access resources on the network is called trusted account. So also scanner normally given an exception or a list of user account available on the given network. Okay, so here what we are trying to do, we are trying to address and understand how an entity is basically enabled in terms of access to be given, and then control that access to the nth level. So that this way what we are trying to do, we are trying to understand or address all the users which are trusted or untrusted, and we keep scanning their activities in terms of if they are accessing the entities which they should be, or they are trying to access the entity which they are not authorized to, so that we can basically log such escalation, and then the reviewing party or the auditors or the cybersecurity analyst can understand what type of weak links, what type of challenges we have for a given network, for a given user, for a given trust based relation, and then we might do a detailed audit, a detailed analysis. We might serve show cause notices to some user in terms of why you are accessing this, because you don't have access to that account. He or she might be doing it unknowingly, and after our notice, they might stop that thing. And this way we progress our network, keeping very private, very secure, and this is a kind of periodic activity. Okay, so security is not a ribbon cutting ceremony as we normally speak, right? So security is a progressive steps to be taken to attain a stability, to make sure whatever we do to achieve these stabilities, we will keep doing it periodically by incremental basis. Okay, same with post-based scanners. Here these type of scanner are specifically for workstation or a server. The first was for a complete network. So it is kind of generic packet receiving and packet sending. Here we are talking about a request coming to a particular server or a workstation. In network-based scans, we have a group of IP addresses to be tackled to. Here we have single or couple of IP addresses to be reviewed in terms of the request received, the request supplied, supported by the same workstation server or a given network host, or all these entities which are serving on the network. So this way we are here targeting a particular machine, particular physical or logical machine, and then these scans basically do a kind of outward scanning. Outward scanning in a sense, the software, they reside on a server and try to understand which type of request they are receiving, which type of request they are fulfilling against those requests, and that way we can check out if the users are trusted user, or they have the requested authorization and authentication given to them whenever they try to put a request to a given server, given workstation, given printer, given router, and so on and so forth. Just to mention, all these network vulnerability scanner have a history logged in somewhere. So whatever we scan in terms of a historical periodic scan, the logs get stored or archived in a particular location. So even if somebody tries to update it, like all the English movies, shown in good number of English movies, all these scans are normally backed up on a cloud in a read-only mode, so that if at all somebody played around with the log report on a given network, which can be even write or modified enable, but at the end of the day we have a copy of such scan available on the cloud which is stored securely for a read-only purpose. And these is basically a kind of we are learned from our mistakes, so that even if somebody updates the log on a given local system, the cloud log can be used for forensic analysis, can be used to check out if somebody tampered with the log on the ground. And this there were good amount of such incidents, like many of good hackers, as they normally clear their trace for a given network penetration, these read-only logs give a clear idea of who have requested from what IP address and so on and so forth. So that's why these network scan and their history catching mechanism is really important. If you could explain this thing to the interviewer, interviewer will be clearly amazed in terms of how deep your thought process goes in terms of host-based scans or the vulnerability scans. Now, the third one, anybody have any questions on network-based scan or host-based scans? Could you understand the difference between them?
Yes.
You can explain the differences, right? Please make your notes. I'm going to share this presentation also with you, so you can basically write down your own differences, write down your own analysis, how you could be able to explain this thing to the interviewer. There are good number of interviews, almost I think more than 75%, where they've asked this question: what are the different type of vulnerability scanners available? Okay. Now let me move to the third scanner. This is called wireless scan. And as you know, we are in the era of robotics, embedded, and Internet of Things. Wireless scans drives a really great amount of weightage in terms of how do you make sure the wireless network is secure enough, is basically address all vulnerabilities or weak links within them. Okay, so let's try to understand what wireless scan does. Identifies rogue access points and validate that company's network is securely configured. Now, when you talk about wireless, right, there are no wires, so you can't physically see that wire. So these are also called as a intangible network, the wires which are not touched physically. But yes, how we have achieved this wireless scan? What we have done is basically all these wireless routers, they have a limit of access points available by them. The routers which we normally purchase for our house has 8 connections per router. Couldn't there be more? Yes, there could be, but it's difficult to scan, right? So that's why we have a limited number of connections to all these wireless routers. There are wireless routers who can basically give you more connection, but normally the thumb rule is all the wireless router which are used for residential purpose, they carry 10 points. They carry maximum 8 connections allowed by them wirelessly and 4 physically. And that's a normal combination we have adapted over the industry. That's a kind of thumb rule. Now, when you go to another type of wireless connection, which we normally call as a radio antenna, receiver and sender kind of connection, which we normally use for mobile networks, which have seen an exponential growth in last decade, which have gone from a few radio users to a maximum radio users, which can be in the vicinity of 3K plus devices attached to a given antenna. And the antennas range have been also increased from few hundred meters to few hundred K miles. Believe me, there are good amount of antenna used by US military, which can basically send and receive signal for a few thousand miles. The antennas which are used in these unmanned vehicles. Have you seen unmanned vehicles? Those small planes which flown over your landscape with a good amount of good cameras, like night vision.
Drones.
Yeah. Hello.
Yeah, it was drones you talking about?
Yes, sir. Drones. That's right. That's right. So drones we are talking about, those are also based on a wireless network with a very strong wireless, signal sending and receiving mechanism with the ground station, and that's what I'm talking about. Yes. And then there are something called Bluetooth. You might be used Bluetooth on your phone or Bluetooth headset, Bluetooth gaming, and so on and so forth. Those are also kind of networks. Okay, so three major category of wireless networks are the wireless router, which we use in our house, the mobile networks which we use on a day-to-day life, and then the third one is a Bluetooth. There are various types of Bluetooth network also. There's a light Bluetooth network, there's a heavy Bluetooth network, but they are not named it as a heavy Bluetooth network, but that's a normal Bluetooth network which we normally use for our headphones. It's 5.1 Bluetooth network, and so on and so forth. So all these networks, what all wireless networks you normally use, we have to make sure nobody should be able to gain access to your resources in terms of without any particular authorization and authentication. So we have some specific scans for all these type of networks, or a particular scan for a Bluetooth scanning. We don't normally use radio wave networks because it's strictly licensed by the state or federal governments in Canada and North America and in India as well. So for that matter, long range wireless scans is not used by a normal public, but still you have those wireless walkie-talkie who can basically let you communicate through a mile or a couple of miles at the most, right? So those devices are available, like those are from Siemens, Motorola, and good number of such company. They also use a kind of wireless radio transmission and receiving type of wireless networks. Again, as I told you, these are for the couple of miles only. You can't go beyond couple of miles. So this way, even those type of devices has to be secure in one way or the another if you are using for the private communication. So for that, we have to enable some services on that. We have to install some additional vulnerability scanners for them, and there are some specific scanner for these specific type of networks as well. Or there is a one scanner for total addressing those 5-6 networks as far as a wireless network goes. Depending upon your need, depending upon your utility, we normally choose these vulnerability scanners. Okay. Now, when you talk about network scan and wireless scan, these are different. Network scan mostly basically look after the wired scanning, or what we normally call as a tangible scanning. Please write down these words. Tangible means physically you can touch and see. Intangible means physically you can't touch or can't see. Because many interviewers like to ask a question, how do you differentiate between tangible and intangible network connections? So tangible network connection means networks based scan, and intangible network connection means wireless networks. So we have to use wireless scanning in those type of networks. Okay. So please don't get baffled by googly questions. Googly in the sense really tricky questions. You know the answer, only you couldn't understand the question. Okay. So we need to make sure we basically address this extra, challenge in any interview, and we need to make sure we know the answer. We know the words to understand the question. Does that make sense to you? Anybody have any questions as of now?
I'm good.
Right? Yeah. So this way, what we are trying to do, we are trying to basically trying to understand what are type of scanners we've understood, we have studied earlier, and we are trying to address what type of different scannings can be categorized for a given entity, and which type of scanners are we looking for. Okay. Now the fourth one is application scan. These are mostly used by the software vendor, infrastructure vendor. Software vendor in terms of Microsoft, IBM, the infrastructure vendor in terms of Cisco, CNET, and all those infrastructure vendors, right? So these applications can detect software vulnerabilities and hardware vulnerabilities or misconfiguration in a network of web apps. Now these are specifically addressed to the web applications. So these includes web servers, the content delivery mechanism like content management server, SharePoint server, and different type of servers we talk about. So these servers normally comes under the applications vulnerability scanning type of categories. And we do have specific application vulnerability scanners, as we've seen throughout our study of different scanners, right? So here we need to understand in terms of a specific scanner for a specific category and a generic scanner for the generic category as well. But whenever somebody asks you How do you address the issue of application scan? Then you should be able to answer them like a scanner which constantly keeps scanning the application which is deployed to a given server with the help of various addressable mechanism, various authorization and authentication mechanism built into that. And then what are different type of resources the application is sharing with the resources, and how which type of authorization and authentication for those resources given for a particular number of users. So what we are trying to do here, we are trying to address the link between the applications and the users and the resource sharing among themselves. So all application scanners, they try to address all the weak links within such connected space where a user connected to a application to do certain things. And all those banking scanner, remote banking scanners, non-banking financial institution scanners come under this category of scans. These are specifically called as application scans. Okay, so all and if you ever join any software organization, software manufacturing organization, application scanners are the most used among all these 5 categories, because mostly everybody uses applications one way or the other. Even your mobile has good number of application scanners built into them. Mostly these are from different vendors like Samsung, Apple, Oppo, MI, and all those dime a dozen software mobile manufacturing companies. They have included their OS with all those scanners. So we don't normally go for purchasing an antivirus licenses on top of that. But yes, many do that. Means there are a good number of organizations where they have their own way of scanners added to your smartphone, so that whenever somebody tries to take a control of your mobile phone with the help of Bluetooth or any other means, that scanner will notify the infrastructure specialist or the cybersecurity expert at your organization saying, okay, Ravindra's phone is being tampered with, or is being targeted for hacking, targeted for checking out vulnerability for by this software, by this IP address. And this way, even the the organizational associate team can come to you and say, hey Ravindra, could you please lend me your mobile? And they might rescan the mobile while you are in office within a couple of minutes or hours, and get back to you with the added preventive mechanism logged onto your smartphone. And this way all even buy your own device, or we call it bot, this buy your own device kind of thought process is also getting started in various big giant IT organizations, where they let you have your own device used for official purpose. They compensate it one way or the another, but in such scenario, as the device is owned by you, they make a contract with you saying, okay, when if you are using your own device for our work, then it has to be secure with our network scanners or the application scanner which we use in our house. So what they do, they will add a couple of applications to your smartphone, your laptop, iPad, iPhone, whatever you're using throughout your organizational network as well. And that will make sure if somebody tries to hack your phone, a laptop, desktop, palm top, whatever they have been allocated within this void type of um, facilities, they will make sure if anybody tries to hack, tries to get an access to any resources with these devices, have been notified with the associate team of your corporate environments. And that's how these application scan works at the nth level. They keep checking out if any request is coming to your devices for accessing, if it's trustworthy or not. They won't let that user access your device one way or the another. For you to send a file, it's a different scenario. For you to receive a file is altogether another different scenario, as far as these application scan goes. Okay, so these have different services, different way of addressing all such weak links with a given set of parameters to them by the corporate scans, corporate policies, and rule books, so that whenever you try to access any particular devices. And I'll tell you my experience. One of the fellow from IBM was trying to set up a a printer at his home. He couldn't because the ports have been blocked by the corporate scanner. He tried for at least couple of days. Means he tried to call the printer services. He tried to call good number of his router services helpline, but still his iPhone couldn't connect to the printer because the corporate scanner have been marked clearly as the port not usable or couldn't be opened by the phone's operating system. Now, whenever he checked with his corporate network associate team member, he told, okay, you need to put a request in writing so that a port can be opened for your printer. And then the corporate associate team asked for the MAC address, this address, and that address, so that he couldn't, add another printer than whatever he is using with his phone at his home. So even for a small scenario like using a printer or adding a printer to a void device is a challenging stuff sometimes. This is for the betterment of corporate. This is for the betterment of yourself, so that the device is not to be hacked, not to be tampered with in terms of gaining access without any authorization and authentication. The next thing is the database scans. Have you understood how does application scanning works? Anybody have any question, confusion on application scanners?
No, sir.
Yeah, good, right? Thank you. Then there are the last type or the fifth type is database scans. As we all know, we do use database one way or the another in our day-to-day life. Now, these scanners are basically aligned towards the database server, database client, or database, storage encryption type of services. So these scans do, identify any weak points within the database storage, access mechanism, one way or the another, and these are also periodic scans. Mostly not as frequent as daily, like the network, host-based, wireless, or application scan, but at least once in a couple of days. Because database are more of a what you can say a passive entity which we use it unknowingly. So even this is the kind of weakest link we have in terms of our thought processes. So if somebody asks which are the lamest scanners around these five, the database scanner, because many of us we know database we use daily basis, but we normally ignore such connection. Believe me, as I told you, right? There are some guest account comes free with every database server, be it a MySQL, Oracle, PostgreSQL, DB2, and all dime a dozen of database servers available across the globe right now. All these database server mostly have a guest account. What do you mean by guest account? An account with just a generic username password common for all such databases. For MySQL, there's a guest account with 1234 as a password. Well, they might have changed this password with depending on versions released in the latest MySQL category, but overall this is how a typical unsecured user access given to any database server. And many of our database administrator, they know we have to close this guest access, but they forget to. Now these guest access are the most weak link available for the hackers, even good number of databases, as we've seen, right? Whenever we use this database scanner or scanners like nmap or waterboo, they try to give you the weak link, right? They try to tell you these number of ports are available for accessing without any particular user base, or the guest user access is still open there, and that way you can really get connected to number of resources within that database server. Now this is a very common mistake even within the region, very educated regions like North America or Canada, and that's why there are good number of cyber attacks or cyber hacking type of events go on in place in good corporates as well. So for that matter, now it's a practice whenever some new employee, new cybersecurity analyst joins your organizations, they will first check for all database guest users do exist in a given server or can be accessed via smart tools like nmap, waterboo, and a number of other tools as well. So what we're trying to do, we are trying to trying to prevent all such backdoor entries which are given by the vendors for a specific purpose. It's not fault, but it's basically the thought process of letting the recovery happen in terms of you miss the administrative skill sets. So these are a kind of specified backdoor entry made by the database vendor to make sure you don't lose your data, even if you lose their administrative account or various really high credible accounts. But still, it's a weak link which we need to address whenever you start using this database for commercial purpose, for critical data, for any private data for that matter. And that's why even there are good number of enactment in place in a region like Europe, North America to make sure you address such weak link for a given database, for a given data storage and archival mechanism, including the history storage, the best practices storage, and so on and so forth. So this way, database scanners are the most weak scanners or most ignored scanner in this 5 category. But still they also have a really great number of weak links at their credit. So that's why we have to take database scans very seriously. We have to address those weak links who exist in such database entities, database server, client, workstation, and the different ports associated with them. Have you understood the database scans? Any questions on database scans or any other scans for this matter? Can you hear me?
Yeah, yes, sir.
I couldn't hear, ma'am. Could you repeat your question, please? Hello? Could you repeat your question, please, ma'am?
Look at the thighs.
I did not have any question.
Okay, no. I think ma'am
No,
was
I-
asking.
No, I didn't have any.
Can you hear me? Yes, sir. I can hear you.
Yeah, yes, sir.
I couldn't hear, ma'am. Could you repeat your question, please? No, ma'am. Where am I getting those? Hello? Could you repeat your question, please, ma'am?
Look at the thighs.
I did not have any question.
Okay, no. I think ma'am was asking.
No, I didn't have any.
Can you hear me? Yes, sir. I can hear you.
Yeah, yes, sir.
Pardon me, there are some echoes, I believe. There are some echoes. Could you repeat your question, please? No, ma'am.
Something's going on here.
Okay,
Everything is repeating.
Stop here. Yes, sir. Let me go. There are some echoes. Could you repeat your question, please? Okay, I believe this is good, right? Pardon me for that. I think somebody gone wrong, and I don't know. Okay, let me start the recording again. Yeah, I have stopped the recording. Let me start the share and the recording again. Pardon me for that. Yes. No problem, Pratik. Okay, so yeah, let me start the recording again. Okay. We have understood the question specifically. What are the types of vulnerability scanners? So these are the 5 vulnerability scanners, and we have discussed how each scanner is important to given corporate, given entities, so that we have to address all those weak links within these different scanners available for me. Okay, let me move further. Now, just to reiterate these things, these are really important point. So we'll just reiterate in a quick few minutes. Even if you have any challenge in understanding, do ask questions. Okay. So network-based scanner, network-based vulnerability scanners identify possible network security attacks and vulnerable system on wired or wireless, specifically wired one. Network-based scanners discover unknown or unauthorized devices and system attached to your network and help to determine if there are unknown perimeter points on the network, such as unauthorized remote access server, remote access port open for a given connections or insecure network of business partners. So a network scanner can check out all those networking points which are attached for a given network. So this way we are continuously periodically scanning our networks one after the another. Okay. The next one is basically host-based scanners. So host-based vulnerability scanners are used to locate and identify vulnerability servers, workstation or other network hosts and provide greater visibility into configuration, settings and patch history of scan system. The host-based vulnerability assessment tools can also provide an insight into potential damage that can be done by insider or outsiders once some level of access is granted or taken on a system. This means that there is an auditing system of which type of access has been granted, how critical is that access. Is it a guest access with the least privileges? Is it a root access with the highest privileges? And the whole nine yard in between them. So this way, we are trying to gauge the criticality as well. So depending upon the criticality, the escalation has been triggered within the associate department. So that if it's a critical thing, it will get addressed right there and there within few minutes. Than waiting for the morning or the evening or whatnot, your policy and procedure have given me. Okay, then wireless application, uh, wireless application and a database scanner. Wireless scanners, vulnerability scanner used to identify rogue access point and also validate the company's network. Is it securely configured or not? And they keep checking it periodically. Application scanner, as we've seen, application vulnerability scanners test the websites, web servers, client servers in order to detect known software vulnerabilities, erroneous configuration, and network or web application in terms of any weak links, any resource shared across with the standard username password. Like even there are good number of web server which have guest user access. So all these guest user access has to be closed down before you move to the critical websites, critical mission, web servers. We have to address all such regular weak links which are provided by the vendors. Same with the database scanners as well. So database vulnerability scanners identify weak points in a database so as to prevent malicious attack. And also all the accesses given by the default access point, the normal username and password pair has to be disabled for a given critical mission critical database or the database which has a privacy data stored into them, which is kind of enforced by various state and federal law within North America and Canadian region. Okay, does anybody have any questions on all these 5 type of scanners?
I'm good, sir.
Right, okay, let me move forward. Now external and internal vulnerability scan. There are interviewers, even you after discussing these 5 type of scanner, they might check you on these type of scanners. So are they externally vulnerability scanner and internally vulnerability scanner? Yes, you can categorize your scanner based on these 2 points as well. The external vulnerability scan can help organization to identify and fix security vulnerability that an advisory can use to gain access to their network. External vulnerability scan is performed from outside the organization network, targeting IT infrastructure that is exposed to the internet, including web application, port, and network. Now, these are specific functions for ethical hackers or external consultant, external cybersecurity expert hired by many organizations. So Ravindra can be an external, cybersecurity auditor or analyst who keeps scanning number of websites periodically, once a week, once a month, depending upon the contract, so that he might be checking any weak link created or the older weak link opened for a given web application, ports, network for a given organization. And these are basically really good brand based cybersecurity analysis who did do this thing for number of organizations. They also suggest various tools, various vulnerability assessment mechanism, so that these organizations make sure periodically they have these weak link addressal mechanism once a day, once a week, depending upon the organizational criticality, the data criticality, even the legal challenges involved into these vulnerability scanners or vulnerability scenarios for a given corporate. An external scan can detect vulnerability in the parameter defense such as open ports in the network firewall or any server mechanism, specialized web application firewall, which basically target to something like credit card and data sharing, the banking or non-banking services, data access mechanism where the monetary services are allowed in open over the cloud services and so on and so forth. So these are specifically a kind of I'll not say weak mechanism, but the most targeted mechanism by the hackers, by the wrong intention of people, where they try to steal your hard-earned money one way or the another, even during transit or during any storage with your bank. And that's why we have to have some specialized web application firewall as well as scanners exist in a real corporate scenario, which are kind of proprietary to given organizations as well. So company like Bank of America, they have purchased some cybersecurity company. They have included cybersecurity portfolio within themselves, and they have developed some good number of tools to be, served with your banking application. And this really takes the overall vulnerability scan scenario to the another layer. Does anybody have any question for me? No,
I'm
I'll
good.
Yeah, so let's look at the internal vulnerability scan. Now, when you talk about external vulnerability scan, we are talking about anybody and everybody outside your network, outside your all the type of networks, means wire, wireless, and so on and so forth. But when you talk about internal vulnerability scans, these are mostly trusted people, your employee. But does employee can make mistake? Yes, definitely. Even employee can be fiddled around with coercion, corruptions, and everything, so that he or she will share his credential with the another hackers or a party. Okay, and so that way these internal vulnerabilities can do help us to make sure if Ravindra as an employee working for an organization, he have his limited access or what you can say zero trust policy. If he start accessing any other entity outside his scope, outside his trust set, then that type of access is escalated by SOC, so that all cybersecurity team can make sure he or she, the employee Ravindra, shouldn't damage anything or shouldn't get access to a critical data. That can be something like Ravindra might be held at gunpoint and might be trying to access good number of resources and trying to create a new vulnerability within a given system, and this happens quite a good number of time. Even good number of English movie plots are based on such coercion based access gained by gained via an internal trusted mechanism like an employee access system, right? And that way, this is one of the most critical or a daunting challenge. Mostly all monetary organizations like banking and non-banking services uh, do face on day to day. An internal vulnerability scan is carried out from inside an enterprise network. The access can be wireless or a Wi-Fi, depending upon the authorization and authentication policy procedure adopted by a given organization. These scans allow you to harden and protect the application and system that are not covered by the external scan. External scan is like viewing your house from external entity. Internal scan is like analyzing your house from internal. If you have opened any kind of tunnel, you dig up any tunnel from your room to outside fence or something like that. So if you imagine a kind of jail break, so there are internal help and external help, right? And to have a what I can say a criminal trying to escape from a jail, we can categorize his helps or his strategies based on internal vulnerability assessment or external vulnerability assessment. Similarly, in terms of cybersecurity expert, we are trying to address internal as well as external separately. Now let's review or concentrate on the internal vulnerability scans. Vulnerabilities that can be exploited by an advisory who has penetrated the perimeter defenses. So once an external hacker or external criminal mind penetrates your network, he becomes an internal user, right? Or he might create a trusted user based on your server's ID and IAM based services. And that way, he can basically behave as an internal vulnerability or internal weak link to your given network. The threat proposed by malware that has made it to an inside network. So all these malware attacks, like malware software sent via an email, malware software or a phishing software sent via email, sent via an advertisement on a web server, and so on and so forth, these are treated as an internal vulnerability attacks. Identify the insider threat posed by a disgruntled employee or a coerced employee or a contractor or a partner as well. So there are some challenging scenarios in insider threat, and as we know, these are the insider threats, so they can make more damage than the external threats, because external threats can be managed with all those scans, with all those exceptional mechanism, with the least possible effort. For internals, the things are basically penetrate your external network, and they are within your house, if I may say so, in terms of representing the way the threats have been assessed with the internal scanning or internal vulnerabilities. I hope you could understand the difference between internal and external vulnerability scanners. Anybody have any questions?
I'm good, sir.
Right now, can anybody tell me if you want to scan specifically IDIM tools, what do you think? Are we scanning internal threats or external threats? Identity access and identity storage type of tools. What do you think? These are internal.
Internal.
That's very right. That's very right. I just want to make sure we are in sync in terms of going ahead or progressively learning this scenario. Okay. So we have learned two different types of scanners. One is 5 types depending upon the entities we are scanning, and the other is external versus internal scanners. Okay. So external network scanner and internal network scanner are one of the most another prominent category of scanners available in the market. Now, authentication versus Is anybody have any question for me?
I'm good, sir.
Right? Okay. Now let's try to understand authenticated versus unauthenticated vulnerability scan. Now, as we've seen, right, we hire some ethical hacker or so-called ethical hackers who can become unethical by the by the criticality or the monetary gain of the hacking thing. Believe me, I have seen good number of ethical hacker turn to unethical hacker once they got to know the number of monetary benefits from turning from authentication to unauthentication hacking. And yes, these things do happen in a real world because we are human, we are prone to coercion, we are prone to what I can say greed, right? For that matters, even we need to monitor our ethical hacker as well. So how do you monitor or how do you make sure we don't provide any authorization to this ethical hacker? And that's the beauty of it. So whenever you try to work with an organization as an ethical hacker, you have to do your own research, you have to do your own reconnaissance as we normally discuss within our SOC fraternity. So here what we do, we have created, we have basically hired a tester outside our network without giving any authorization in terms of network access to a person, and he or she keeps trying to penetrate your network from the external entity, and that way you have created a kind of unauthorized vulnerability scanner by yourself. And this is why ethical hackers are really popular among good number of SOC organizations. To ensure that the vulnerabilities can have no lapse in detection, it is suggested that both authenticated and unauthenticated vulnerability scans are conducted. While the authenticated scan allows the tester to log in as an user and see vulnerabilities from a trusted user's perspective, the unauthenticated scan does the opposite and offers the perspective of an intruder. So why do we have a higher ethical hacker? The answer is given in these statements. So we hire ethical hacker to make sure unauthenticated scan are being tested as an untrusted user trying to penetrate or trying to behave as an intruder. So we hire a tester from an external entity to try to penetrate your network if there are weak links existed within your network, within your corporate entities. Scanning under all circumstances again ensures that even with the constantly evolving technology, companies are safe from threat. Again, this is a periodic mechanism, right? Like we have for other scanning mechanism, these mechanism basically make sure we periodically keep checking these, scan from an external angle with these ethical hackers one way or the other. Okay, so this way, and this is the main reason why we hire ethical hacker. Can anybody tell me in their own words why do you hire ethical hackers? Just give it a try. These are really important questions from an interview perspective. Why do we hire ethical hackers? Anybody? Give it a try, please. Could you hear me? Hello, am I audible? I'm not audible or something?
I could hear you, sir. I could hear you.
So could you try to, give an answer to a question? How do we, yeah, please go ahead.
So ethical hackers are mainly to do those vulnerability testings that whether the systems are vulnerable to the outside environment or the inside environment.
Great answer, Sonalina. Great answer. But this is
Okay.
most, yeah, very good, very good. Means, this is what I want to do. Basically, you should understand even at a non-technical level, you should be able to answer, right? Once you got the gist of it, then we can basically add it up with all those flora and fauna of technical words. That's really great try. Yes, sir. Naresh sir, do you want to try, sir?
Sure. Ethical hackers are mostly, they are like contractor hire. They're
Uh-huh.
trying to penetrate, they're trying to do the vulnerability scanning, testing,
Right.
and that's my understanding about ethical hackers.
Yeah, it's you're in the right direction, sir. Means you're talking about ethical hacker contracted as a contractor. Yes, they can be labeled as a contractor in the HR register, but within SOC we clearly call them ethical hackers, and we say they're ethical because they're not going to steal any of our assets or they're not going to create any damage for us. That's why we call them ethical hackers. But as I told you, in the real life scenario, there are many ethical hackers who have turned unethical. Well, that's a bad patch of our experiences, but still, yes, these things do happen in a real life. Okay, does that make sense? Are we clear in understanding? Please prepare your own answer because for me this is kind of my day-to-day life, right? This is what I do. But as far as a new person's or a new angle to it, you have to create your own answers, might be from the presentations, and then we'll take it up from there. Okay, the next session will be specific for the interview assessment or how to answer questions like tell me about yourself, tell me about your current work, and the questions like what are the different types of vulnerability scanners, and what do you mean by wireless scanners, how it's different from the network scanner, and so on and so forth. Okay, so we should start preparing ourselves in terms of all these interview challenges now. Okay, so do write a script, do practice in front of a mirror, and next time we might switch on our cameras as well, so that I can understand, or you can visualize my body language as an interviewer. It's a kind of real life practice we do in terms of clearing interview. Does that make sense to you?
Yes, sir. Do you have any of those like ready-made? I mean, I understand what you're saying that we should prepare our self answers for ourselves, but any of the like a question answer, do you have those available somewhere or?
Yeah, I've shared some video. I'll share it again, sir. There are interview questions on cybersecurity. I'll share the links again so that you can go through them and prepare your answer. But again, sir, as an artist, I paint my own picture, right?
Yes,
Because
yes.
the printer picture is like their picture. So to have my
Right.
own picture, I have to paint it. But yes, you can definitely take a help, and I'll provide all the help I can. But you have to express your own answer, because as a Ravindra, I can give answer depending upon my thought process, which I can advocate in a more detailed way rather than copy anybody else's answer. If you find the answer suitable, yes, you can give that answer as well. Okay, but my suggestion is try to script down, try to write down couple of answers so that you can choose the best to be given with the most confidence at your talking, most confidence at your dialogue delivery. That makes you are the best candidate for a given interview, right? And that's how we progress step by step. Okay, let me take a step ahead in terms of understanding vulnerability scanner integration with a core impact. Now let's try to understand what is a core impact, what type of events or core events we are talking about here. Vulnerability assessment can greatly be enhanced through a pen tester. Pen is penetration tester. So penetration testing is a part of vulnerability testing. Scanner can uncover thousands of vulnerabilities, and many prioritize remediation based on the vulnerability CVSS rating. So CVSS is an organization who have some sort of a rating. Now again, I told you there are some challenges in terms of.
Sorry about that.
Somebody want to say something?
Sorry, that was my kid.
Okay, no problem, no problem. Pardon me. Okay, so here there are good number of rating agency in terms of security rating. We're going to have a look at it. Whenever we do, interview practice. But to tell you frankly, please don't take a single name as far as a rating agency. There are pros and cons. Some might not like CVSS rating. Some might like this rating, that rating. So let's not fall into that trap. Okay. You can clearly say, if somebody asks which rating agency you might be referred to, say, sir, we would like to have our own rating depending upon the domain knowledge. What do you mean by domain knowledge? For a given rating, let's say for a transactional system like banking or non-banking financial entities, we have separate rating. So there are 3 or 4 really good rating agency in terms of cyber security scanning. For manufacturing, for logistic, for airline, for travel, we have different set of agencies do these rating for them. So that's why if you stick to a said company or a said organization, it's really can damage your outlook in terms of this guy has a better knowledge of that domain than this knowledge, so not correct fit. So we don't want to fall into that trap. So what we do, we normally try to answer this in a generic session. Depending upon our domain, we choose the vulnerability rating agency, and then depending upon organizational policies and procedure, we adopt to those agencies rating as well. And others we just ignore because they are not suitable. It's like a food agency trying to rate your car's safety. Will you accept such ratings?
What
Agencies are
rating, sir? Can you repeat it, please?
yeah, no problem. There are some food hygienic type of ratings available in North America. Those are I forgot the name of the topmost agency, but it's a federal agency which basically certifies the food is at a specific virus free level or something like that, sir, right? So those agencies can they basically try to understand the safety of your car?
No.
Because these are different
That's a different agency.
yes, different domains we are talking about, right? So you need to have a car safety agency separate than the food safety agency or food safety what you can say categorization agency or certification agency. And for such scenario, whenever you're going to join as an employee, as an incumbent, as a contractor, you have to choose that specific domain based agency. Be it something like software products, they might have some different like CVSS, be it something like logistic company or transport company where you normally ship one container from this country to that country, you have a different certification agency and so on. So please, if somebody asks me, what are the different type of agency certification do you believe in? Say, sir, it's basically aligned to the domain where we attach to, and as far as our current challenge goes, if the organization is specifically in terms of software services organizations, then you can mention couple of softwares security certification agencies. If it's a kind of car manufacturer, then there's a different type of agencies. If there's a travel and logistic company, then there's a different type of demarcations and different type of organizations who basically certifies you as a secure transactional organization. Okay, so this way we have to basically what you can say dodge these balls in a simplistic English scenario. Okay, and then try to diplomatic in your answer, and that way even the other person will know he's not falling in trap. He or she know his way around, and he or she can basically choose the correct certification agency for a given set of outputs our company do, given set of manufacturing or given set of work our company do. Okay, so normally these rating agencies are aligned with the domain of your work, the way of your working, the basically production and the services given to the others, and the related certification agency we normally work with. A vulnerability may only have a moderate risk score, but it can be used as a pivot point to reach other vulnerabilities or resources. It could be have a significant consequences on the organization. So a moderate vulnerability is just as is not more dangerous than the one rated as a severe. Now here they try to play around with the word. They are trying to play around with the word moderate and a severe. In some case scenario, a severe impact and a moderate impact can be decisive. What do you mean by decisive? They don't mention the correct impact. A moderate impact on a transactional level can be much severe than a severe impact on a network level. Let me explain this scenario. Let's say you are working in a Bank of America associate executive. Somebody have noted moderate access from a given region for a given loan service vulnerability. So he or she can basically add few dollars and try to change the deductible amount to a great favor. This is a moderate differentiation in terms of the resource addressal mechanism within the software. But in a network, somebody might access your printer from outside. That's a severe in terms of network. But the impact of a moderate, severity is too much to be compared with the printer getting accessed outside the network. Could you understand the example which I have just given?
Yes,
Let
sir.
me reiterate. A vulnerability of some users negating his mortgage amount as a moderate threat shown by a software, and a printer accessed by an outsider network to print certain page as a severe network vulnerability. These two are the same vulnerability accessed by a software to a given network. But at the end of the day, which one do you feel is a severe, vulnerability for a given mortgage, vendor? Could you understood the example?
can you repeat that again one more time, sir?
I'll repeat. Let's say there are a mortgage company, a home mortgage company, and you are a kind of customer to that company, and it's a kind of regional company. Mortgage company are basically regional company. So if you look at a mortgage company from a St. Louis region, which is different from a New York region mortgage company, where these are small companies, so their security is not up to the point most of the time. So let's say there's a vulnerability got created after a software patch has been released to the mortgage online application, where a user can reduce the mortgage by a few $100s if he logged in or click some buttons by mistakes. Okay, that's the vulnerability got notified by a vulnerability scanner. And even at the same time, the vulnerability scanner have notified another vulnerability saying the printer on the third floor can be accessed from the a user on the ground floor to print out certain things, or such network penetration could be possible with certain fiddling around of the whatever commands and all those things. So these are the two vulnerabilities. Have you understood these two different vulnerabilities? In one vulnerability, user can reduce his mortgage amount by a few $100s. Another vulnerability, a ground floor employee can print on the third floor, separate network printer. Could you understand these two different vulnerabilities?
Yes.
Yeah.
For a scanner, to automate a scanner, the printer vulnerability is very severe because an external user able to access or a control a resource. But to a transactional system, playing around or letting few $100 getting deducted from a mortgage is a medium level or a moderate vulnerability. But what do you think from a business perspective? Which is a severe vulnerability and which is a moderate vulnerability?
I think the first one would be more severe because he's able to.
That's right. That's what the answer I'm looking for. Why? Because it's fiddling with the basic business view of a mortgage. So your application is at a fault and has to be shut down immediately. But the automated scanner doesn't realize this because the way their mechanism have been in place, these are pre-programmed scanner, and that's why we need human intervention or human escalation mechanism in place for a vulnerability scanner. And even sometimes the vulnerability scanner gives you a moderate weakness. It can be a really life-threatening, not life-threatening. It can be a really life-threatening or business-threatening kind of vulnerability might got existed because of some software updates, the patch, and all those things. So this way, we need to keep a close eye on all these vulnerabilities, notification mechanism. And this is really important. And believe me, you need to or you should be able to explain these things to the interviewer in terms of how I can basically guide such mechanism and escalation can happen in a real life, and why do you need human intervention to address these mechanisms at the ground, so that even if the escalation mechanism mentioned as a moderate can be a critical to a given system. And that's why we have all these human hands at a desk, so that they are monitoring these vulnerabilities mentioned by the software every now and then. Depending upon your data criticality, application criticality, you have the number of hands on a deck, number of resources working at a given instance of a time. So for a banking and non-banking financial institution, normally the state laws are mandated 24/7 SOC departmental presence, just to make sure all such challenges in moderate and severe vulnerability categorization by the automated software has to be monitored, so that nobody loses his or her hard-earned money. And that's why is basically enforced by the law nowadays. Pen test added to a virtual context by seeing which vulnerabilities are actually be leveraged to gain access within your environment. Now, as we know, the ethical hackers, they also in some extreme scenario get access to such reporting of moderate and severe type of escalation happened at a given network. So they can basically start using penetration testing for a given weak link, and they can be leveraged to basically make sure such all addressal mechanism has been addressed on the priority, because sometimes the SOC employee might be busy in other work and at the same time such vulnerability might exist. So that's why we have certain mechanism in certain organizations depending upon the policies and procedure, so that even ethical hacker will be notified for a particular vulnerability to be assessed on a particular time, particular day, particular night kind of scenario. Core impact, core security comprehensive penetration testing tool can import data from all scanner mentioned above. So now we have a library of tools all above and beyond of such vulnerability scanning tools called core security comprehensive tool. This core security comprehensive tool, like we talk about SOC, right? SOC, where we use certain tools to share such reports, these vulnerability scan reports in terms of escalation mechanism, in terms of vulnerabilities to be shared with some agents, ethical hackers, by email or by publishing such report on a particular private web page, which is accessed by user authentication mechanism. And this way, as we just discussed, we share these penetration testing, or we ramp up the penetration testing to a particular target for a given time, or for a certain period of time in some scenario. So this way the external hackers or the external cybersecurity expert can also guide us in addition to our internal SOCs employees, internal SOC departmental employees, to get a good help on such scenarios. Once imported, the core impact can run as a pen test to see if any of such vulnerabilities can be successfully exploited or not. Why we exploit such scenario, why we export such scenario to the external entities? Because they also have some automated tool at their disposal, right? So even ethical hackers normally do all such testing with the set of tools whichever he or she believes in terms of do the necessary penetration testing for a given server, for a given network. And that's way he or she can basically address the weak links at that particular time or within the time allotted to them. By validating this vulnerability, you will know the true risk they pose and can prioritize which remediation measures should be taken. So even most of the times, these external entities, external consultant support you with such vulnerabilities, or they also give you an addressal mechanism, remedies for such scenario, so that these can be applied within few minutes and the system is then again stable and secure in one way or the another, or as per the corporate requirement. Does that make sense to you? How vulnerability scanner integration with the core impact and with the help of external cybersecurity expert can be taken the cybersecurity to the next level? This is what we want to understand in terms of how to address the core impact with the external help as well. Does that make sense to you? Could you understand this scenario?
Yes, sir.
Great. Do revisit this recording so that you might understand in detail, and you could answer question like how we can have external vulnerability scanner address the core impact or address the external what you can say escalation mechanism within the corporate to help you to go to the nth level penetration testing. This is a kind of extreme scenario. Not all organizations adopt to this, but yes, there are a few, far and few, like the banking institutions, the non-banking financial institution, or the forex trading institution, stock broking institution, where we normally trade monetary value in a high numbers. They normally use this type of mechanism to make sure they have all their tools in place, all hands on deck in terms of addressing any weak link, any threat have been nominated by the automated scanner or the manual scanners. Okay, let me move to my next screen here. I'm going to share these things with you. These are the 12 sites which I would really like you to visit at least once a week. This is a kind of mechanism where I'll read about all new attacks, all new tools to be released within a North American and Canadian community. This is specifically from a North American community. These are not the same as Indians or European counterparts. This is specifically for North America and Canadian type of security space, where we are trying to concentrate on all such scenarios where a new cyber attack has been mentioned, new cyber attack has been published, and the measures taken by state, federal, and other even private agency to make sure those vulnerabilities create the least possible damages. Okay, I'll not go through this complete list. I'm going to share this presentation with you. This is really a good research which have gone into completing this list. So it's really important that you should visit each of these sites at least once a week. Okay, you can take a printout of this thing, or you can have a bookmark of these pages as a cybersecurity review bookmarks kind of scenario. Okay, and that way you can visit this site at least once a week, and please take it as an homework. You can basically visit this site today, tomorrow, whenever you get time, and we'll discuss these sites one by one in our next session. Okay, so next session will be on the 7th of September, where we'll try to understand how to liberate such knowledge and how to add sites to this list as well, because there are certain sites which are regional to North America or Canadian market. We will research for such site, and you'll learn how to research for such site as well, or how I did this research for myself in terms of listing these sites. Okay, I'll not read these sites because I'm going to share this presentation with you, and you can go through these lists on your own. Okay, anybody have any special requests or additional requests in terms of this list, or anybody know any site better and this thing could happen? See, I'm also an incumbent of cybersecurity learning like you, so I don't call myself as a very expert, but we are in a boat where we are keep learning the cybersecurity thought process, technicalities step by step. There could be one new good site which is much more better than this site as well. I'm not denying that. Again, for a given region, there could be some most important site as well. Okay, and I will basically try to understand how to go there, how to research for such site in our next session. Okay, does anybody have any question on these as of now?
I'm good, sir.
Yeah, right.
These are great sites. Some of them I already visit.
Yes, I can understand that.
But this is a lot of info. Definitely a lot of
I
info.
know. Yeah, but once you get to know the site, you know where to look for rather than looking at the complete site. So it will
Yes,
hardly take a minute or two, believe me. And we need to practice this, because when you're getting ready for an interview, you need to have those specific latest hacks. And if you discuss latest hacks, okay, and try to portray it as you discuss this latest hack within your team members. And that's why I was suggesting have another group and keep discuss latest attacks, latest tools within your group, so that you know how to be one of the associate employee for a given company. And this way you'll get a habit, because whatever cybersecurity expert do on a day-to-day life, they discuss this attack, they discuss the attack and the relevance to a given organization. See, if you start working with NASA, if you start working with CIA, you have to understand a typical cyber attack, like trying to steal user ID and password, which happened with the Google, right? Google is one of the most said cyber secure company. Why? Because they have all sort of experts hired by them at the top-notch dollar. So to hack into Google is one of the most difficult thing, right? And when somebody steals millions of, not millions, basically a few hundred K of users' data and try to post it on a network, it's a big blow to the Google. Google as a cybersecurity company. I'm not saying they are weak in any way, but the guy who have done this thing have found a flaw, and that flaw he exploited to nth level. And he's also kind of brilliant cybersecurity expert who have pulled out this data from the most secure database in the world, and believe me, most secure decentralized database in the world, and he have posted that data on the net, and it's a kind of really damaging to the given company. And that way Even Google have basically even hired that person saying, okay, now from here onward, you will basically try to penetrate our database at least twice a week, and this is how much dollars we're going to pay you on a weekly basis or hourly basis. And this is how, as a cybersecurity expert, you can basically build your brand. Okay, I don't want to name a person and then basically try to market somebody as a cybersecurity expert. But yes, all these details are being published in all such websites, and we should know it. Even the naming names and all those scenario, because there are interviewers who likes to name. Okay, and they would like to know. Okay, so who do you know by any chance who broken into the user database of Google's few months ago? So that you should know the name. It doesn't matter if you don't know till yeah I do it's on my tip of tongue, but I couldn't I don't know there's some problem. Let me refer to my notes and I'll come back to you on that. So you can say something like that. This will make sure that the interviewer knows you are studying these news, you are studying with the current affairs in terms of cybersecurity, and we need to create that picture with the interviewer. Okay, now let's try to understand. Yes, we do have a hands-on workshop as the last leg of our session seminars, and we'll discuss this in our next session because we are almost at our last time. We'll discuss this seminar. I'll share the slide also with you so that you'll understand what we're going to discuss. So next session we'll discuss these 12 sites and few more, and basically the hands-on workshop we do as a last leg of our training sessions. Okay, so let me wind up today's session here, unless anybody have any question for me at this moment. Anything which I can explain in more detail?
I'm good, sir.
Yeah, good. Anybody else have any questions, or should I wind up this session? Should we close for today?
Good, sir.
We are good, right? Chalo. Let's have a good night, and pardon me to basically have a session on Labor Day weekend. No problem. Okay, so let's enjoy. If you have anything planned for tonight and something, let's meet a day after tomorrow at 9:30 p.m. EST again.
All right,
Okay.
thank you, sir.
Thanks a lot.
Thank you, sir.
Have a good night. Bye bye. Take care.